Higurashi no Naku Koro ni, or Higurashi When They Cry, is a murder mystery series developed by Ryukishi 7 and 7th Expansion as part of the greater When They Cry franchise, which includes titles such as Umineko and Sikonia. Higurashi first graced the wider otaku sphere in the mid-aughts, with the animated adaptation by Studio Dean debuted, at which point it established a notable and highly visible profile and reputation for its distinct and memorable confluence of cutesy high school hijinks and skin-crawling nightmarish horror, both in terms of the good old-fashioned blood-spattered variety, and of the variety that fans the flames of foreboding, ominous paranoia. In 2020, a new animated adaptation by Studio Passione was released, which, while technically shaping up to be a sequel to the 06 adaptation, also serves spiritually as a remake for the wholly uninitiated, providing those who had missed the boat the first time around an easily accessible jumping-off point. Given the renewed excitement from both longtime fans and a wave of newcomers, there may be interest in unpacking the cornucopia of Higurashi content out there in the wild, so I decided to put out this short primer. While this is primarily aimed at those who climbed aboard Higurashi 2020 out of curiosity, even if you've been along for the ride since the days when message boards were littered with deranged Sonozaki gifs, trust me, there's quite a bit to unpack here. I won't spend too much time summarizing Higurashi's plot. It's centered on Keiichi Mayabara's recent relocation to the countryside, to an unassuming sleepy village called Hinamizawa, whereupon he soon finds the town is plagued with a series of mysterious disappearances and killings, striking once a year, every year, like clockwork. The root of Higurashi is the visual novel, though most fans may refer to it as a sound novel, and it was originally released for PC between 02 and 06, featuring 8 chapters which comprise the main story, as well as a few extra chapters which cover the aftermath of the main story, and some lighthearted comedic hijinks in the form of Higurashi Rei. An animated adaptation of all 8 main story chapters was released between 06 and 07 by Studio Dean, comprising 2 seasons totaling 50 episodes, plus a 5-episode OVA in 09 covering the extra chapters. A 38-volume manga adaptation was released between 05 and 2011, adapting the same main story as the anime and sound novel, but with a few additional one-off manga-exclusive chapters. A few of these manga chapters would see extended adaptations as part of sound novel re-releases down the line. The series then followed a scattered pattern of console re-releases, PC re-releases, and just to add to the confusion, console re-re-releases. To keep things relatively simple, the console adaptations for the PS2, DS, and PS3/Vita introduced 3 major additions. Number 1, an alternative final chapter to the main storyline, replacing the existing final chapter as a sort of grand finale ending that attempts to tie up all of the unresolved conflicts that have arisen across the entire series. Number 2, a handful of bonus chapters which primarily serve as alternative scenarios of some of the main story chapters. Though there is one exception, these are mostly what-if-esque excursions that typify the conventional VN branching narrative structure. And finally, number 3, a brand new storyline called the Advanced Story that runs parallel to the main storyline and features a completely new cast of characters. Now, the canonicity of this additional content is often called into question, as Ryukishi's contribution ranges from some highly speculative, poorly defined amount to none whatsoever, but it all fits into the overall Higurashi lore cohesively, and alongside the canon storyline, serves to complete one hell of a grandiose overarching narrative. In 2014, the sound novel received an updated re-release, which included a few additional scenarios such as Hinamizawa Bus Stop, based off of Ryukishi's initial drafts for Higurashi, and Higurashi Outbreak, an ostensibly alternative universe zombie apocalypse-style spin-off. Finally, in 2018 and 19, all of this bonus content was wrapped up by Intergram and released in a Switch/PS4 port, making this release the definitive, most comprehensive version to date. As far as other adaptations go, there certainly isn't a shortage of offerings, such as a light novel adaptation, yet another OVA series, a quirky chibi shooter, a gacha mobage, live-action movies, live-action TV series, stage plays, drama CDs, pachinko machines, the list goes on, and now I have to put a disclaimer that this primer is nowhere near comprehensive. And finally, the 2020 anime by Studio Passione, bringing us to the time of this recording. So how exactly does one go about sifting through all these adaptations? I'm personally a huge believer that the sound novel easily offers by far the richest and most rewarding experience. You see, on account of it being, well, a predominantly written medium, it methodically metes out the horror in that slow, intense, encroaching dread kind of way. And while that's present to varying degrees in the anime, most prominently in the first and third chapters, it's definitely overshadowed by the notorious scenes of brutal violence. The end result is that the anime presents a mix of principally atmospheric and visual horror versus the distinctly psychological terror offered by the sound novel. Superficially similar, yes, but vastly different experiences in terms of precisely how they get under your skin. Finally, the sound novel covers a lot more of the lore of Higurashi, devoting more screen time to the societal and ideological framework of Hinamizawa, painting the village as a relic of the post-war era with its staunchly traditionalist values standing in opposition to the wave of modernization of 1980s Japan. It definitely doesn't shy away from wading deep into social commentary at points. I mean, just look at this dialogue if you want to talk about self-righteous, borderline jingoistic nationalism. Was this ghost written by Hideo Kojima? All of that having been said, I know VNs are a niche medium, as well as the fact that the first question anyone who's been through the whole VN song and dance before will ask, and justifiably so, is, how long is it? And yes, Higurashi's length can be daunting, clocking in at somewhere between a 60 to 100 hour commitment depending on your reading speed. But while I consider it more than worth the investment, my broadest recommendation is, if you haven't seen the 06 Dean anime yet, just go ahead and start there. At the time of this recording, the Dean anime is available on HIDIVE and VRV in its entirety. You can also get physical copies from Sentai Filmworks. It's an overall solid adaptation, and as I mentioned previously, the series does do a commendable job of leaning into the dynamic nature of the animated medium and dialing up the haunting atmosphere and the grisly, gory violence to really leave a lasting impression. From there, you can either follow up with the 2020 Passion anime, available via a variety of means, and or jump into the sound novel. After all, like any good mystery, Higurashi has immense rereadability, as past scenes take on completely new meaning when viewed with additional context. The Manga Gamer release of the sound novel has recently finished localization of the 8 main chapters, and you can grab all of them either directly from Manga Gamer or through Steam. Also worth highlighting is that there exists a supplemental unofficial mod for the sound novel, which adds the option to use the PS3 sprites and enables the Japanese voice track for the characters, which significantly enhances the overall experience. But the real meat of the unofficial mod is that it also gives access to the 3 sound novel exclusive offerings I mentioned earlier: the alternative ending, the handful of bonus chapters, and the advanced story. And if you've already been through the anime and find retreading old territory too tedious or unrewarding, you can leverage the mod to instead jump straight into this slew of additional content. The advanced story primarily follows a straight-laced detective named Tomoe Minai, who, while investigating a string of unexplainable violent outbreaks in the neighboring city of Kakiuchi, finds herself entangled in a deadly conspiracy that reaches far higher in the political pecking order than she ever imagined. On top of that, the alternative ending bridges both the main story and the advanced story into one electrifying grand finale, a finale where the stakes are raised through the roof as our heroes are faced with a world where every single unresolved conflict hits them simultaneously. While it may not be strictly canon, it ties up so many unresolved loose ends and embodies the spirit of Higurashi so holistically that it feels much more like the true ending to the series than the original finale ever did. Finally, the manga is also a worthwhile excursion. At 38 volumes, it's similarly unexpectedly generous in terms of adaptational legroom, and as a bonus, in terms of scenes that will absolutely make your blood run ice cold, the manga has by far the most detailed, grotesque, and downright unnerving visuals, which, when coupled with the startling, reveal-oriented panel composition that you'd find in most great horror manga, makes for a spine-chilling and genuinely terrifying read. So if that's your cup of tea, definitely check it out. At the time of this recording, you can find it on Bookwalker or Amazon. The rest of the Higurashi content out there in the wild can be summed up as being loosely available, with both official and fan translations here and there, and if you can get a hold of them, they're mostly fun, lightweight, and occasionally interesting diversions, but the majority of them don't amount to any more than that. So in summary, Higurashi is still a horror mystery powerhouse, and whether you climb aboard via the anime, manga, or sound novel, you'll find that there's really never been a better time to pay a visit to Hinamizawa, even nearly 20 years after its initial release. I hope you found this primer useful, and thanks for watching.